Hello, my name is Douglas Bloch. I'm an author and depression survivor. Welcome to your Depression Recovery channel, where each week we talk about practical tools and coping strategies for healing from anxiety and depression. In a previous video, I talked about my hospitalization in the psych ward during January of 2016, during which time I underwent 8 treatments of electroconvulsive therapy. For those of you who have not seen my video on ECT, electroconvulsive therapy is a method for treating severe depression, in which the brain is stimulated with an electrical current, producing a grand mal seizure. In some way that scientists don't understand, this seizure rearranges the brain's neurochemistry and creates an alleviation for the symptoms of depression. Some studies show that ECT is just as effective as antidepressants, and other studies show it's actually superior to antidepressants with a more rapid onset of action. You know, when you take something for depression like Prozac, you have to wait 4 to 6 weeks to even know if it's working. With ECT, people can feel good even after the second and third treatment. Now, ECT works especially well for people over 65 years old. And when I entered the hospital, I was 66. Before I could start the treatments, there was one thing I needed to do in advance, and that is go off 2 medications I was taking, Lamictal and Wellbutrin. Now, Lamictal is an anti-seizure medication, so you can see why it wouldn't be a good idea to take it before or during, ECT, because it could prevent seizures, or at least get in the way of them from happening. And then Wellbutrin actually promotes seizures. So if you're taking Wellbutrin during a treatment, it could actually make the seizure too strong. So both of those medications had to be discontinued. So here's how the actual treatment went. I was awakened at the ungodly hour of 5:45 in the morning. This is because the treatment actually started at 6:30 at another hospital. To get there, we needed an ambulance to transport us. An escort led me out of the hospital. I came to the ambulance, and they had a wheelchair. They wheelchaired me into the ambulance using a ramp, and then they went ahead and used some seat belts to strap me down into the floor of the ambulance so I wouldn't go back and forth while the person was driving. We drove. After 20 minutes, we came to the hospital where the ECT procedure was to be done. And the name of the hospital was Oregon Health Sciences University, known as OHSU. After we arrived at the hospital, I checked in. And after that, I was led to a room with 8 beds. There were going to be 8 treatments that day. I put on a hospital gown and lay down on one of the beds and just waited for what seemed like an eternity. Then a nurse came in and said, "We're going to put an IV in you so we could administer the anesthetic, and that's going to knock you out during the treatment so you won't feel a thing." So she put the IV in and left. Then after another period of time passed, the actual ECT doctor came, asked me how I was doing, and said, "Okay, we're ready to actually do the treatment. You won't feel a thing. Now, first thing I want to do is give you some oxygen." So she put an oxygen mask over my face, and I breathed in pure oxygen, felt really lightheaded, and then she said, "Now we're going to administer the anesthesia. It may burn your hand a little, it may actually burn a little, but don't worry about it. It's really, just safe." So I felt this warm feeling going into my arm, and the next thing I knew, I was out, and I woke up an instant later, or it seems like an instant later, in the recovery room. When I awoke, I was told that the anesthesia only put me out for 10 minutes, but that was all that was needed. In fact, the actual seizure itself only lasted between 30 and 60 seconds. And that was obviously really quick. I was then given some juice and crackers and sent on my way home or back to the psych unit, where I felt a little bit of a contact high. After the ECT treatment, I actually felt a little better and said, wow, maybe by the 3rd treatment, I'll be feeling normal. The second treatment did not go as well as the first. When I woke up from the anesthetic, I didn't know where I was or how I got there. I had no memory of what had happened, but I felt really, really afraid. Then my escort, Michelle, came up to me and said, "Hey, don't worry. You've just had ECT at OHSU Hospital. We're going to take you back to St. Vincent's where you're residing, and that's what's going on." It still was very confusing to me, and it took me about 4 or 5 minutes before I reoriented myself in time and space and knew where I was. This scenario of temporary amnesia repeated itself in the next 6 treatments. I would wake up, not know where I was or how I got there. I'd be panicky, and then after a while I'd get calmed down. I was told eventually that this was a side effect of the anesthesia, and that many people who get electroconvulsive therapy have the same kind of side effect and have to be consoled until they finally get their memory back and realize what's going on. On January 29th, I received my 8th treatment of ECT. It was also my 24th day in the hospital. Well, since the normal treatment protocol for ECT or electroconvulsive therapy is 8 to 12 treatments, I thought I should maybe stay in the hospital one more week and get treatments 9, 10, and 11. Imagine my surprise then when my shrink said, "Guess what? You're being discharged tomorrow." I said, "Wait a minute, I want 3 more treatments. This is the normal protocol. I want this thing to work." He said, "Well, I haven't really seen that much of a change in the first aid, and in fact, you have told me a couple of times that the treatment actually made you feel worse." And that's not possible, I said, but sure enough, he was right, and I'll take out my diary kind of to prove it. We were encouraged to keep diaries while we were in the hospital, especially me, who was going through ECT, who would forget a lot of stuff. So I'll just read 2 brief passages here. January 29th, I had my 8th treatment of ECT today. Once again, I emerged from it depressed and semi-suicidal. I can't believe that is not helping me one iota. And then from the day before, actually 2 days before, after a treatment, I said, "What can I do? I cannot control the contents of my mind and my feelings. The ECT is supposed to be helping, and it is not. What does that leave me? There is no other fallback system. I have no idea where I am going to be 2 days or through the next week." So again, not very promising reports of ECT coming from the diary I was writing in the hospital. I was discharged on January 30th. It was a Saturday. And so you might be wondering what happened after that. Well, believe it or not, the ECT actually did help me. For one, when I woke up in the morning, I was no longer agitated. This agitated culminated with my hitting myself in the head, a way of punishing myself for not making the right decisions that had led me to this depression. In addition to this morning relief, this lack of anxiety basically continued throughout the day. I actually felt calm and serene. Calm and serene, never thought I'd feel that way. My friends told me that my voice was stronger and that my affect was not so flat and that I had vibrancy not only in my voice but my whole being. In short, the ECT had cured some of my symptoms. Not all. I still had some depression to deal with, but the symptoms were basically decreased enough that I could work on them using other treatments, other treatment protocols like therapy and other tools. So there was a noticeable improvement after I got out of the hospital. I don't know why it took so long, but maybe it takes a while for the ECT to settle in and to have your brain reorganized and restructured. Mine certainly was. Thus, I would recommend ECT or electroconvulsive therapy to anybody suffering from severe depression or anxiety. If you have any questions about my experience, you can leave your comments in the comments section below, or you can write to me at douglasbloch@gmail.com. This has been Douglas Bloch. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you want to learn more about my work, you can go to healingfromdepression.com or click on the links in the closing credits. And until we meet again, I wish you the best in your mental health recovery. Thank you.